44 summers our next speaker spent at Towingo. 44. Well over a decade as a director, and over a decade as the principal of the school that bears his name. All in addition to being a part of Camp Dawa, Camp Before Towingo, and a regular counselor on Jack in the Box. Whenever Dad introduced this gift to camp and to young people, he would say, "Assistant camp director and my best friend, Barry Lott."
Good afternoon, friends. As a student at Deep Collegiate in Ottawa, I was keenly involved in all sports, with a particular interest in basketball. It was the practice of that time to play with one's high school team, and then afterwards to search out additional court time and competition, both of which were most often found at the YMCA. That is where I first met Jack Pierce, and so began an association and friendship that spanned 58 years. In the late 1950s, Jack invited me to join him at the YMCA camp on the Dawa on Golden Lake. Within a few years, Jack made a life-changing and very courageous decision to depart from a very successful operation to head out on his own. He asked a number of us to join him on his new venture, Camp Towingo. How exciting it was to be part of something new and challenging. From the beginning, it was clearly evident that Jack had a very deep passion for this new camp, its staff, and especially the campers. The first summer in 1961 soon became two, and with the snap of a finger, here we are, some 53 years later. Amazing. Over the years, I have been asked countless times, why should I send my kids to Towingo? The reply was very simple. Every camp has cabins, a dining hall, a health center, a waterfront, and so on. What Towingo has is superior staff members. One of Jack's many talents as our director was his ability to attract and recruit outstanding and talented staff members, and this has been the cornerstone of Towingo up to and including the summer of 2013. For many years, it was Jack's practice to have all staff members introduced during orientation. And I'm sure there are many here today who recall the absolutely mind-boggling resumes as each staff member was introduced. In turn, it was these leaders who profoundly influenced the lives of so many campers, and this continues as well to this very day. Jack certainly had an eye for talent. After departing for a few years to continue my schooling and to get married, I returned as senior section director. Jack was excited to inform me that he had assembled a group of guys unknown to me at the time, including Mark Baldwin, Andy Bryce, Hugh Christie, Tim French, Jeff Gibbs, Jim Knowlton, Tom Rowan, Dave Lee, Dan McKeegan, Bill Milks, Hugh Monroe, John Pierce, and others. And oh, how magnificent they were as Towingo leaders. It is interesting to note that in their subsequent professional years, They have all also performed at extremely high levels as lawyer, educator, chemical and nuclear engineer, artistic director, PhD in psychology, university professor, businessman, a pastor, Renaissance man and TV personality, Deputy Chief of Maritime Command in the United Kingdom, Vice President, Scotiabank, and so on. Not a bad group, eh? Jack certainly had an instinctive feel when selecting staff members. At Camp Twingo, there were always superb role models for campers and staff alike. On a personal note, my early role models included John and Ed Beach, Harry and Lou Brown, Wally and Pat Delahaye, Mac and Phil Eston, Don and Bev Hayes, Ray and Betty Marinko, Ed Reed, and George and Mary Simonet. And of course, Jack and Helen Pierce. Jack was a visionary in so many fields, and many of you may be unaware that he hatched a brilliant concept in children's television programming. The show was called Jack in the Box, which aired nationally for several years. What he accomplished was to bring camp to television. His show had the following format: an opening, a sing-song, games and relays, stunts, skits, a story, and a closing. Does this sound familiar? You bet. This was a recipe for a successful campfire. Now, Jack also included special guests on this show. On one particular day, he invited a magician to perform a number of tricks during the last 6 or 7 minutes of the show. When it came his time, the magician literally froze. The floor director was frantically waving his hands, pointing to his watch and signaling the stretch sign. Jack proceeded to give the magician a number of verbal cues. Well, old magic one, I guess you have a few tricks for us. Nothing. Further consternation from the director ensued. But Jack was always so quick. On the set, there was a decorative bowl of fresh fruit. He spread it over and grabbed a large apple. On air, he said to the magician, "I am going to make this apple disappear right under my nose." Whereupon, he proceeded to quickly eat the apple and said, "Ta-da!" He was extremely proud of Jack in the Box. However, he was doubly proud of Tom Moulton and Mark Baldwin for their own children's television show, Camp Caribou, which followed many years later. Jack was a guy's guy. He was often in the midst of any fun happenings in a camp. While in pursuit of my eagle crest, over a half-century ago, one of the requirements, and by the way, which no longer exists, was to replicate a number of bird calls. As the summer was coming to a close, I was desperately attempting to finish off this last item. I successfully completed 2 of the 3 required bird calls, but I got stuck, I believe, on the yellow-throated warbler. Now this was all unfolding at the final banquet. Picture this. There I was eating mashed potatoes and roast beef and running up to Harry Brown's table to make one of many several attempts. His response, "Oh, so close." But not quite. Back I would sprint outside to practice, and then I returned noticing that Harry, George, and my friend Jack, who at that point was laughing uncontrollably and was hiding under the table. They were enjoying my desperate attempts. It really was quite hilarious. So I asked if I could substitute with another bird call. They agreed, and I selected the hummingbird, whereupon I cleverly emitted a loud hum sound. I passed. What fun we had. As well, Jack always enjoyed playing softball, particularly on first base and with Pop Pierce as umpire. I also remember the inter-camp basketball games, his golf workshops for campers during interest groups, the construction of the par 3 golf course, his joining all of the all-boys programs, always with elaborate costumes, barbecuing and special cheeseburgers on the terraces with such care and pride, hosting wonderful weenie nights at the Taj fireplace, Jack's snacks at the Taj, and also contacting many of us to review our picks for the NCAA March Madness basketball tournament, and how many other enjoyable moments. Although at times firm in his resolve, Jack very often displayed a very soft spot in his heart. On numerous occasions over the many years, I and others approached Jack to aid families whom we knew were in need and were unable to finance a camping experience for their children. He would quietly and thoughtfully ponder our requests, and without fail, and never seeking anything in return, he would simply say, "Please invite them to join us this summer." And just a few days ago, Carol and I were out to lunch in Ottawa, and we met one of the many campers who benefited from Jack's generosity. To this very day, he has very fond memories of his experiences at Twingo, and there are literally hundreds of others just like him. Many will recall Jack's glare from his table in the Pop Pierce. Often after receiving his stare, staff members would approach me and ask, "Oh, what have I done?" In fact, with virtually every glance towards the various tables, he was simply deeply engrossed in thought about some new idea and really was not upset at all. Jack very much enjoyed his meals, and in particular, desserts, especially rice and tapioca puddings. And I can assure you, it took a number of years of leftovers to have them both phase off the menus. For Jack, a plate of creamed peas on toast with a rice pudding dessert, priceless. Over the many years of our friendship, a basic tenet was that we could agree to disagree. I can recall numerous occasions where we were engaged in heated disagreements. However, upon the conclusion of our discussions, we would simply move on with no hard feelings, ever. Yet another beautiful lesson that he taught me. Upon receiving news of Jack's passing, the Lawton family huddled, as I'm sure many of you did, to grieve and to reminisce. What emerged from our conversations with Jeff and Jenny was to imagine if Jack had not followed through with this vision of his, Camp Twingo. There would have been for our kids no experiences as campers, no WJVA, no TLC program, no varied positions on staff, no teaching at Twingo College, no meeting Alan Pilcher and Catherine McCrae, no grandchildren, 4 of the 5 are currently Twingo campers, and no lifelong Twingo friends. Their lives definitely would have taken very different paths. How many of you here today have also shared similar thoughts? Jack always set high expectations for everyone, especially for himself. It was uncanny how he brought the very best and more out of all of us. He often shared with me that if one expects nothing, that's exactly what they will get in return. He positively influenced, motivated, and empowered us to achieve what otherwise we might not have been able to. We all strive to do our very best and to be members of the Twingo team with Jack as our leader. He encouraged us as we just sang, "We can make a difference." And indeed, Jack, with his passion for camping and youth development, made a very significant difference in the lives of literally thousands of campers and staff. Jack loved the telephone, and we would often, like teenagers, spend an amazing